As I promised some time ago, I promised I'd do a video on the operating system that I use to run my Union Pacific Branchline layout. So here goes. A bit of history about the layout. It was originally designed to be run by one operator, which would be me, with operations in mind, but not to be too big and complicated that it would become a maintenance nightmare, especially seeing as I'd be the one doing all the maintenance. So I decided to build what is essentially a point-to-point branch line with a small rural town with several industries that are serviced by local freights from larger cities to the north and south. And although the layout has been designed for ease of operation by one operator, it can quite easily provide operating interest for up to 3 operators if I should find anyone that's interested in joining me. I've made some minor changes to the layout since making the first videos. These involve the removal of the turntable and 3-stall roundhouse and filling the space with a new 2-stall diesel locomotive service shed and an additional 3 yard spurs, including a small fuel loading facility. The town of Maywood now has 6 rail-served industries. They are Prairie Star Flour Mill, Prairie Star Grain Silos, American Hardware, Lawston Shipping, Advanced Engineering and Nevada Fuels. There's also a small line-side lumber mill, Hillside Lumber, to the south of Maywood. There's 4 scheduled trains that run through Maywood daily, 2 from the north and 2 from the south. So from the start I wanted to be able to run the layout reasonably prototypically. So there needed to be a reason why industries were receiving cars and also why there were pickups. And as a result I experimented with the tried and tested car card and waybill system of operation. This seemed to work quite well, but I had a constant stumbling block in my own mind as to when to turn the waybills into car cards, especially due to the inherently sporadic durations of my operating sessions, which were anything from 15 minutes at a time up to a couple of hours. So I wanted a system that would allow me to quickly take up from where I'd last left it, operate it for as little or as much time as I wanted, and then be able to leave it again at a moment's notice, ready to continue at the next session. Now it was these often short sessions that were playing havoc with the decisions as to when to turn the waybills into car cards. So I decided to write a computer operating system to make those decisions for me. So the operating program is written in Visual Basic and it's undergone several changes in its brief lifetime, and no doubt we'll go through several more before I'm 100% satisfied, but the current version of the program has been in use for some 6 months now and it's proving to do exactly what I want. So the program assigns the required cars for a particular train along with the required destinations for each car. So where a car is destined for an industry that is on the layout, the operator has the choice to either drop the car off spot near the required destination so that the car can be delivered by the local switcher later, or they can deliver the car directly to the required industry. The operator can also pick up cars designated as ready for pickup and whose next destination is in the direction his train is heading. Once a car has been delivered to its destination industry on the layout, it is listed as waiting to load, unload. The operator can make a decision based on the day of the week and how busy that industry may be at the time as to when the industry workers may actually start loading or unloading the car. Once the car is designated as loading or unloading, the program keeps track of the elapsed time of the loading or unloading, and once a designated time has elapsed, it will mark the car as ready to pick up. Whenever the program is paused or shut down, the values of each relevant car's loading or unloading time is saved so that it can be resumed when the program is next started. In this way, the timing of a car's progress across the layout can be controlled regardless of the time duration of a given operating session. All the necessary information that the program needs to operate is saved in a series of files. These files include a list of all the freight cars, which include car types, road names, road numbers, and it's an easy way to add new cars, so if I purchase new cars I can easily add them to the roster without having to rewrite the program. And this file also keeps track of the car's current location and its loading status at any time. It also keeps track of how often each individual car has been selected to be included in a train so that the same cars don't get chosen every single time. Another file keeps track of all the possible destinations, so if I add new industries to the layout at any time or want to take some away, I can do it quite simply from this external file, so it doesn't require reprogramming again. Also the times used to calculate the loading and unloading of the different car types, that's also stored externally, so that can be fine-tuned. And also a day-to-day list of each industry and what cars it requires on a day-to-day basis, and this gives anything up to 2 weeks worth of running, at which point it then just loops around and restarts again. So let's start the program and I'll see if I can explain briefly how it works. So this is the main entry screen for the program. Now along the top there's buttons for the 4 scheduled freight trains that run each day through Maywood, and to the right of those there's provision for the running of a couple of commuter trains each day. So I haven't completed that part yet, so that's still work in progress. To the right of the commuter train buttons is displayed the day of the week. So this gets updated once all 4 trains for a given day have been run. Below the row of train buttons is an area that displays the cars that are currently located within the Maywood area that are either requiring the attention of the local yard switcher or are ready to be picked up by the next appropriate train. So a message panel directly above this list of cars displays what actions need to be undertaken by the yard switchers. So if there is nothing outstanding, the message panel will display no current alerts. So from the current alert message we can see the yard crew has 4 cars currently off spot and 1 car ready for pickup that's not actually in Maywood Yard. So the 2 box cars destined for Prairie Star Mill, so that's 652907 and 652926, as well as the 2 cars destined for Advanced Engineering, numbers 66625 and 90075, they're the off-spot cars. So these will need to be transferred to their respective industries by the yard switcher so that the cars can be loaded or unloaded. And boxcar number 51263 is ready for pickup, but it's still sitting at the Prairie Star Mill. So ideally the yard crew will move it to one of the yard spurs for pickup, and this saves time for the next local train crew coming through. So sometimes there may be cars sitting in the Maywood Yard that are ready to pick up, and if the include cars in yard ready for pickup control is checked, these cars will also show in the top list of cars, but as they don't require any work to be done by the local switcher, they won't produce a message in the message panel overhead. So the message panel purely shows cars that are requiring attention by the local yard crews. So the bottom area of the screen, it shows the freight cars that are currently located at the various industries at Maywood and also at Hillside Lumber. So these buttons here allow you to view either the cars sitting at the various industries that are waiting to be loaded and unloaded, or to view the cars that are currently being loaded or unloaded and how far through that process they are. The message panel above this list of cars displays reminder messages of the number of cars that are still waiting to have the loading or unloading commenced. So it's more a reminder so that these cars, so the loading and unloading actually takes place, even though we might have displayed up the list of cars that are actually being loaded or unloaded. So from the current alert message we can see that there's 6 cars that are currently waiting loading or unloading. They are 7202, 3689 and 38093, which are all sitting at Lawston Shipping, and the hopper cars 21503, 77425 and 79041, which are sitting at the Prairie Star grain silos. If we now click on the cars loading unloading button, the window will update with a list of the cars that are currently loading or unloading, along with an indication of how far through the process they are. So we can see we've got 3 cars currently loading or unloading. We've got flat car 726328 at Lawston Shipping, which is about 57% finished, and box cars 127438 and 184241 at the Prairie Star Mill, which are both around 37% completed. Now sometimes we may need to move a car temporarily so that we can drop a car at an adjacent industry. So we can do this by highlighting the required car to be moved. So in this case we'll use flat car 726328 at Lawston Shipping, and so we'll highlight that and we'll press the pause load unload button, and you'll see the selected car disappears from the currently loading list and appears in the upper Maywood Yard train duties window and shows as load, unload, hold. So once the car is ready to be returned to the designated industries, we highlight the car again and select the set out car at, in this case, Lawston Shipping button, and the car is returned to the previous car's loading unloading window, and it resumes the loading and unloading process. As an aside, you'll notice at the moment that the windows currently appear with a grey background. So this means that the program's currently in pause mode and none of the timers are actually operating. So if we press the button marked Run Session, this causes the program timers to commence and the window background will change to green to show the program is active. You'll notice that when the program is active, the Run Session button now changes to be Pause Session and the Program Exit button is disabled. So to exit the button, we need to first pause the session. That will save the session at the point of where it currently is up to, and we can then exit the program altogether. So the program uses 4 different timers to determine the time to load or unload a specific type of car. So the settings that I'm currently using are 10 minutes of real time to load a hopper car, 85 minutes of real time to load box cars and flat cars, and 25 minutes of time for tank cars. So these times seem to work nicely with the actual time it takes to run a train across the layout, perform some switching while maintaining realistic switching speeds and also allowing for pauses for brake air build-up, couplers to be disconnected, etc. So we'll leave the program in the active mode at the moment. So now let's look at the function of the train buttons. So pressing on one of the 4 train buttons at the top of the screen causes a new window to pop up with the details of the selected train. So we'll select the first train for the day by pressing the Train 11 button, which is a northbound train. The area at the top of the window shows the current consist of the train, while the area at the bottom shows a list of cars ready to be picked up at the various Maywood industries. Initially, the cars in consist list will be empty. We press the Set Consist button and this allocates the required cars for this train and displays them in the list. The list shows the car type, the road name, car number and where the car is destined for. So we can see here that we have UTLX tank car 641533 and Connex tank car 1811, both destined for Nevada Fuels in Maywood. We've got UP box cars 554228 and 197164, which are both destined for American Hardware, and SP tank cars 65280 and 63471, UP box car 454277, along with MP box cars 367263 and 367267, which will be destined for Flagstaff, Arizona, which is the upper loops. From this list, the train is assembled with the designated cars in the southern storage loops, and when it's ready, it's run out onto the layout. Again, you'll sort of notice that the Train 11 window background is currently yellow. So when we're ready to run the train onto the layout, we select the run box. This changes the background to green to show that the train is actually running. So when our train arrives at Maywood, the engineer has the choice to simply drop off the cars for American Hardware and Nevada Fuels onto the main siding for the yard switcher to on forward to the respective industries later, or the engineer may drop them at the industries himself. So if we take the first car on the list for American Hardware, and highlighting this car causes the buttons at the side to give the engineer the option to either drop off spot or set out car at American Hardware. So we'll select drop off spot for this car, and the car now appears in the top Maywood Yard train duties list of the main screen as off spot and shows it as needing to go to American Hardware. The message panel above also updates to show the added car that is currently off spot. Returning to the Train 11 window, we'll now select the remaining car for American Hardware, and we'll assume the engineer has dropped this car off at American Hardware. So he selects to set out car at American Hardware, and the car appears in the bottom Maywood Industries list on the main screen as awaiting loading or unloading, and the message panel above updates to include the new car in the total number of cars waiting to be loaded or unloaded. Now we'll assume the engineer has dropped the 2 tank cars off to Nevada Fuels, so we'll highlight them one at a time and select the Set Out Car at Nevada Fuels Maywood button. They each now appear on the main screen as also waiting, loading, unloading, and the message panel again updates to reflect the new cars that are waiting. In the lower part of the Train 11 window is a list of cars that are ready for pickup, and it also includes details of where they are currently located. So we can see there are 3 box cars. There's ATSF number 51304, BN 249139 and BN 249197 that are all currently in the Maywood Yard Spurs, as well as one box car, ATSF 51263, which is currently located at Prairie Star Mill. To pick up any of these cars, we simply highlight the required car and press the pickup button. So to save running late, the train crew will pick up the cars that have already been prepared for pickup in the yard, but will leave the car at the Prairie Star Mill for the next northbound train to collect. So the 3 cars picked up will now be included in the train consist. Once the train has completed its run into the northern loops, the run box is unchecked to mark the end of the train run, and the remaining cars in the train are released ready to be used in another train. So we can choose to select the next train if we wish and repeat the previous process for the new train, or we can decide to deal with the alert messages for the yard crew, or we can do both if we're feeling suitably alert and ready for action. So let's look at some of the yard operation scenarios. We can see from the message panel at the top that we have 5 cars currently off spot and 1 car ready to be picked up, not in yard. So let's deal with the cars that are ready to be picked up but not in the yard first. So we can see here that boxcar 51263 is currently at the Prairie Star Mill and needs to be picked up to on forward to Henderson, Arizona. So the yard crew can pick up the listed car and drop it in the yard tracks ready for collection. As the car is dropped off in the yard, the operator highlights the car as in yard, and that car no longer adds to the list in the yard message panel. Once we've dealt with the pickups, we can now deal with the cars that are off spot and waiting delivery to their respective industries. So we currently have Southern Pacific box cars 652907 and 652926 waiting to be dropped off at Prairie Star Mill, UP box car 554228 waiting to be delivered to American Hardware, and SP boxcar 66625 and Ontario Northern boxcar 90075 waiting to be dropped off at Advanced Engineering. So again, as the yard crew drops the cars off to their designated industries, the operator selects the Set Out Car at whichever the relevant industry is button, and the car is now removed entirely from the upper car list and appears in the lower list of cars waiting loading and unloading. When all the cars waiting for pickup have been located to the yard tracks, and all off-spot cars have been relocated to their respective industries, the yard message panel will display no current alerts, so there's nothing outstanding for the yard crews. Now let's look at the bottom of the screen at the list of cars currently at the various industries in Maywood. If the car's waiting loading / unloading button is selected, we see a list of all cars that are sitting at the industries of Maywood waiting to be loaded or unloaded. Highlighting a car and pressing the load unload button causes the car to disappear from the current list, and it also starts the loading unloading timer for that car. So let's try it on UTLX tank car 641533. We highlight the car and press the load unload button. If we now select the car's loading unloading button, we can see that the car we've just selected now appears in the list and its percentage of loading unloading is shown. So each car that's waiting to be loaded or unloaded is dealt with in the same way, and the operator is free to select when the loading or unloading commences on a particular car. So for example, if I run a new car into an industry that is already loading 2 other cars, I can decide there's not enough staff on at that industry to be able to do anything with the newly arrived car until one of the other cars has been completed. So this introduces a bit of random timing of events across the layout, which adds to the operating interest rather than all the cars changing status at the same time. Hopper cars are treated slightly differently to all other cars. So the Prairie Star grain silos have a loading track that allows the loading of 1 car at a time, although the spur can hold up to 5 cars at a time. So in this scenario, the designated yard switcher moves the next car to be loaded under the loading shelter, and the selected car is selected on the display list and the load unload button is pressed. So we'll try it on hopper car 21503. So we highlight the car, press the load unload, and at the bottom of the screen you'll see the hopper car number appears next to a small display showing how far through the loading process is. Loading of hoppers is faster than any other car type, but only one can be loaded at a time. So while a hopper is being loaded, if we select another hopper car from the waiting list, you'll see that the load unload button is disabled. As soon as the current car is loaded, the yard switcher moves the next car into position and the process is repeated for the next hopper car. So the entire operating scenario is largely a sequential operating system, so we're not running against any actual timetable, so I can choose to do things at whatever pace I want. So having said that, I do need to remember that the loading and unloading timers for the active cars on the layout still run to a specific time interval, but this has been set to a pace that allows for realistic operating speeds and operator pauses, and has enough padding to allow me to do things in pretty much whatever order I want for the day. So I can modify the timing values easily if I want to spice things up or allow for a second operator to share the duties. It's proving to be a very flexible system without compromising operational interest, and it can be paused at any time and the system will resume from that point in time when it's next started. One late addition to the program is the incorporation of random event messages every 3 or so operating days. So these incorporate things like refuel or swap locomotives on the next southbound train, or refuel the current active yard locomotives, etc. So this causes a ripple through of the most frequently used locomotives in an operating session. So yeah, that gives all locomotives a fair share across the layout. So that basically is a run through of my operating system. It used to be a lot more involved than it currently is. The original program, I had it requiring me to assign locomotives that were to run a particular train or switch the yard, and the time spent running was used to calculate fuel times, locomotive service times, but I ended up spending more time watching a computer screen than actually watching and running the layout. So the decision was made to simplify it. So I hope I've been able to explain the system simply for you, and maybe you can use some ideas from it for your own layout. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope to post an operating segment using the program in the next video. So cheers for now, and thanks again.